Alrighty, let's get back to work. So, in a previous, if you hear weird sounds in the background, I got two cats in here. One of them's a kitten. They might actually argue with each other. Anyway, last time around, maybe two times ago, I was magnetizing underneath this guy, and last session the magnets all came off, and I figured out exactly why that is. And that's because I used regular old modeling glue, which is what you use to put all these parts together. What that modeling glue does is it essentially microscopically melts the plastic, and then as the bits evaporate out of it, it refuses with both sides melted together. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever for magnets, because you're not going to melt this magnet. So essentially I just melted plastic on one side, and then did a pretty terrible job of getting any sort of fuse together. So what I'm going to do this time, X-Acto knife, crazy glue, glues everything. I'm going to scrape down, and I don't need to like perfectly sand this, but I'm going to scrape this down, these spots that I had before. I'm going to do it very carefully because X-Acto knives are dope. And most of what I'm trying to do is, actually I've got this other tool here, dental thing. So I'm going to scrape down sort of the sins of my past so it gets flat again, and I get a little bit of this primer off. And then most of what I want to actually do, hello cat, is just scrape it down and then score it a bit to get more surface area, and then crazy glue these magnets down. Now the thing I still need to be wary of, which thankfully I was last time, I'm not the most organized person so it's easy to screw this up, is magnets have two sides, positive, negative. What I want to make sure that I do is that all three of these underneath this, because eventually this piece is getting glued down on the top, are polarized the same way up, and then all the weapons are polarized the opposite way down. Otherwise you can't hot swap them, which is the entire point of this process. So that's something I'll have to be wary of. But right now I'm just going to pretty safely just run some lines across this. And I'm not too worried about how this looks because this is going to be all covered up. What I'm doing is creating additional surface area. I'm just going to score it both ways for the glue to bond. On this guy, it doesn't need to be crazy. I don't need to gouge it a ton, but I'm not going to be able to get back under here. Like once this thing gets glued back on, I'm committed. So I want to ensure that it has the best chance possible before I do all this crazy. Alrighty. So that's decently scored. Somewhat religiously put the cap back on my X-Acto so that I don't murder myself. I'm sure it would be very exciting for viewers to see me put an X-Acto through my hand. I'm not into that kind of biz. Alright, so I have my magnets. I need 3 for the bottom of this. And I have 1 test magnet. And we'll see how this goes. In fact, what I did last time, which was very helpful, I'll do it again this time, so you can see that's where the magnet came off before. I may actually need to really flatten this down on this one, because it's got a little recessed spot there, is I'll glue it onto one of the weapons first, and that will serve as a guide, because I can just move the weapon around from hard point to hard point. Yeah, I think I will do that. SMRT smart. And yeah, it is like, what time is it? Yeah, it's like 4:30 in the morning. I tried to take a nap earlier. I'm generally like pretty wiped out from work on Fridays, and I was like, told my wife, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna lie down for a bit. That was at like 7:30 at night. It was like right after dinner. And then I woke up at like 3:30. I was like, that wasn't a nap. She actually came in and asked me. She's a good person. She's like, do you want to get up? And I was like, nah. And so I slept till 3:30. And now it's 4:30 and I'm up attaching magnets to my toy soldiers. Excuse me. Clear my throat. Burn the mic, have some tea. But I am a relatively busy man, so it's catch as catch can for my time to do this modeling stuff. So it's me and the cats up, hanging. So this one technically doesn't matter which way I go because it's my test. Well, it's not really a test. I mean, this is going to be a permanent gluing of this, but I'm using this rotating gun as the first magnet, the key magnet. It's not a test, but it is the key to all of these lining up the right way. If I do that right, I am in business. So I'm also going to leave a little bit of time for the glue to set. So once I set this guy in, I'm going to move over to some washes in a bit. Oh yeah, that's going to be nice. These are also bigger magnets than I used the first time. Oh, I forgot how dope crazy glue is. So obviously I want this nice and centered. A little bit of a press. Yeah, that's good stuff. All right. So I could set this stuff back a little bit, let that dry. But for my next, it's not really a trick. My next thing I'm going to do, it's so funny. Look, all these magnets on my desk, all these metal tools, now they all stick together. I need to properly bin this stuff back up. And I have my magnets out. These magnets are so funny. Curiously strong magnets. Which reminds me of magnets, how do they work? Alrighty. So it's been a fun, somewhat prolific week. Getting a lot of things done. This Tyrant is a lot of work, but I really enjoy it. It's my biggest, definitely by far biggest model to date. And the paint scheme that I'm going for is somewhat similar to, I still gotta get very used to that whole this camera business. See if I can scooch this light around a little without, there we go. Without breaking everything, without shaking my entire rig. I apologize to the no viewers that are watching this. So this guy, pretty much somewhat old school Death Guard. There we go, try focusing. But you can see that he's got some of the like old school light colored, but very tarnished stuff going on. And he's got Death Guard green going as well. Which is actually AK slimy dark grime, whatever. I want my Night Tyrant to match that, part of the same army. And when I buy more knights, they're all going to be Chaos Knights, so they'll all harken to some sort of Chaos God. So it'll still fit in there. And what I'm going to do is hit the spots that are already covered in Wraithbone with some Seraphim Sepia. I am always horrified by the very first step of like Wraithbone over Death Guard green. It looks like absolute garbage. But when you get in there with washes, it smooths things out a lot. I may need a bigger, nah, this brush is good. It really weatherizes things, and I'm hoping it does the same here. Here we go, that's good stuff. Right in those little crevices, and with washes in a lot of cases like this is going to be interesting because it's a huge panel. Like this panel is patently the size of some of the models that I do. A lot of the models that I do. So I'm curious to see how it works out, but this is supposed to look pretty darn weathered. It's not supposed to look like an airbrushed, super pretty loyalist knight. It's supposed to look weathered. We get plenty of this stuff in there. It's a little brushly. One of the things that I will do, take this, sit, is I'll sometimes do a run, and I know this seems a little weird, but I'll actually water down some of my washes. a bit. All it is, washes are just tiny bits of coloration floating in goo, which is what allows them to sort of just find their way into all the crevices. So it's kind of okay. Oh yeah, we've got cat wrestling match in the background. To loosen it up a little bit. Man, that does look weathered. Big old panel. I'm a little curious. I may actually score this guy up a bit also after the first round of painting, because these are huge panels. I may decide to go back and add some damage to them, but I gotta save that thought for another time. These do look very painty though. Normally, those brushstrokes don't really show through, so I may have a problem here long term, but I'll get there when I get there. A lot of this weathering, a lot of this method of using Seraphim Sepia over raised bone does not look good for quite some time. There we go. Now they're screaming at each other. 4:30 in the morning, cats fighting in the background. My moment of my zen time. The house is all quiet. The house is mostly quiet. I think someone downstairs is rocking out, but loose stuff, just move it around, get into all those nooks and crannies. I'm not too worried about the edges. You always, when you're using washes, you want to remember what you're using them for specifically. And in this case, I'm trying to make something look like it's possibly been sitting around for 10,000 years in the warp. If I was doing a different model setup, like, say, an ultramarine, I don't have to actually worry too much if that gets on the edge there. And I was just trying to bring out depth in certain spots, then I'd be very surgical about where I was dabbing stuff. But my point here is to take something that used to be pretty darn neutral color and really make it look like it's been sitting around in the warp forever, aging it. In that regard, some amount of, you watch a lot of videos and they're like, oh, don't let it pull up at all. That makes 100% sense when you're using a wash, to just add some contrast and pop. But if you're aging things, then that is like the result of this guy fighting on many planets with acid rain, with not getting a proper wash. I'm pretty sure that the Death Guard, if they do spray down their knights, it's with pretty gross stuff. is the point. Yeah. Put a bunch of this stuff in here, and then I just let it dry, and it'll almost certainly get, depending, I'll probably hit potentially another coat of this on there. One of the other things I do when I'm weathering this stuff with like something like Seraphim Sepia, it's like, A, I might loosen it up. B, this may not be obvious, but I will take it and hold it at different angles while it's like in the middle of drying, so it doesn't all just pool in one spot. It can sort of like, gravity will allow it to pool, hello kitty, in different directions. So you get different amounts on different edges. That's not really a pro tip. And if this is the first of these videos you're watching from me, I am not a pro. I'm very new to this. I'm just kind of learning as I go. But learning as I go, learn some stuff. That is okay. You can sit in the corner. And we'll just continue on. Add a little more water to this guy. I do have concerns about this treatment of white. It's not, I think I get away with a lot more shenanigans on tiny models. These are such big plates. I'm not sure it's actually going to look that good. At least so far. It's not going to look that great yet. I may have to do some additional weathering to it, for it to really not just look sloppy. Well, I am new and I'm not great at this. I'm not trying to make things look bad. I'm just working with limited skill right now. So this one you can see that I've already hit the edge. I basically used this as a test. I hit this with Warp Block Bronze. And I do like how it looks, so I'm going to continue with that. I might do some of that later. Just dabbing it in there. When you're using washes, a lot of times you can sort of blop a decent amount on, and then you just push it around with the brush, let it go where it's going to go. It might come through. There is a lot of brush marking on there. Look back on this guy. He is a little heavy in some spots, so I can remedy that with a little bit of water. Now I'll just put water on the brush, get things moving again. It's also going to pick some amount of pigment up, and then I just dab it on the old paper towel, just keeping things moving. Kind of water it a couple times, and it'll just loosen things up. And then by dabbing it in water, putting it on here, and then dabbing the brush, paper towel, just kind of, whoop, see that? When you loosen it a bunch, then you can, with water, then you can just touch like a Q-tip or a piece of paper towel to the edge, and it'll just soak up a bunch. So I'm going to do the same thing over here because it's a little heavy. So I'll just dab some water on there, dab some water on this edge. Give it a second to sort of mix up a little bit. And then all I'm doing is just thinning it a little bit so it's not too crazy. And I'll do the same there. A lot of what you want to do is just like hit a piece of the model and pay attention to what it's doing and react a little bit. But I do want some amount of this stuff clumping up. Like, absolutely do. Boop. We just don't want it to be egregious. Man, it really does look painty though. Boop, boop. I think I am definitely learning something new here. So these plates are so big that the wash doesn't have, they're so big and so flat. Surface wise, like even though this is bent, there's not a lot of undulation on it. And I think what I'm learning here is that my methods where I'd wash the daylights out of this guy in certain spots, you can just constantly insert stuff, is there's so many crenellations and crannies and stuff. Like, not sure this guy's probably gonna need some fixing at some point. Like, this just looks brushed on. I think a baby woke up. House might start getting loud. But we'll see. I try to see things through as far as I can. And then adapt. So that said, this time around, I'm going to thin this out even more before I get in there. There's a very non-zero chance that this is going to get an entire thin coat of Wraithbone over all of this again. So this might just be fun practice, what I'm doing right here. Yeah, because I had hoped the wash would sort of thin things through, and obviously I'm going to wait till tomorrow. There's an overnight element of these paints that I really love, where what it looks like in the moment, and even while it's somewhat dry after an hour, there's a certain amount of curing and chemical process that's always going on with these paints and how they react with each other in washes. Definitely a lot of times in the morning after, not in this case because it's what, almost, yeah, it's almost 5, but a lot of times we'll say the next day things look different than when you left them. A lot of times for the better, sometimes for the worse. All right, so this time around, going nice and thin from the start, watering down the Seraphim Sepia. can always do 2 coats. Another thing that I've definitely learned. And while I'm an impatient person by nature, remembering that you can always do another coat is very strong. I think another thing they get away with these huge panels, especially looking at the box, and I'll grab that box again in a second so I can actually show you what I'm talking about, is this set comes with, this model comes with like a huge pile of decals. I think part of what they do is they hand paint a bunch of like checkerboard stuff on here. Man, am I not doing. Shaking Hands McGee. There's a bunch of decals for it. In fact, yeah, there it is. So you get this whole sheet of stuff that is, practically speaking, kind of useless to me, because it's all good guy stuff. I mean, I could put some skulls on. Maybe I will. I doubt it. And then, as I reach around here, so you can see like checkerboarding on there. So that breaks that one up. There's this like horsey decal on there. But they obviously do a much better job of the actual raw painting. I don't have an airbrush. And I'm starting to see why people actually use airbrushes. It's for, I mean, obviously you can use them for small parts, but like for big things, it's pretty useful. My painting looks pretty sloppy on this guy. I might be doing a scrub and redo at some point. But that's all for Seraphim Sepia this minute. Though I can always hide behind the sort of Death Guard, grimy look excuse. Okay, that's on that pretty good. In theory, put this here. I grab a singular magnet. With that gun as my sort of key, that will stick in the right direction. What I'm going to do is let the magnet do the work. Someone on this stream, I think it was Lizard Wizard. There's only like 2 or 3 people that have ever seen this stream live. I think they mentioned another AK product. I wrote it down somewhere. Grimy business. I might try that on there. That might help out a lot. Because you need the magnet on the other side. It's the key. So that now sticks in the right direction because I put the magnet on it. On the other side, now all I have to do is get it centered before the crazy glue really gets crazy. It should be in business. Oh yeah, that's stuck on there way better. It's a much better magnet. The other thing that I did is I upped the size of my magnets. I think I went from like 4 or 6 millimeters wide to 8, I think. Yeah, you can see one of these. Let's see if I can do a comparison without them jumping all over the place. There's your size comparison. Look at it. This whole thing's measured. Those are moved up a notch. Bigger magnets, better pizza. Or however the saying goes. Alright, crazy glue. I really hope you do this justice. Plop a bunch on here. I'm being liberal on this side because, as I said before, you won't be able to see it. This is all going to be underneath business. Put my key back on there, so I'm doing this in the right direction. It'll be super funny, but not that cool. To actually have the magnets push all the guns away. Don't want that. Give that a little press. Oh yeah, the house is definitely waking up. No peace. crazy glue. Everything step by step. Key back on there. My magnet flips the right way. Hands shake. I'm just going to drop it. And that makes sure that it is polarized to the right side. And I just leave it. Don't touch and touch and touch and touch and touch everything. That needs to settle. All right. What's next? Surprise green stuff. I've never used green stuff before. This is actually my first time. But in order for the arm magnets to work, that is a gun, a dope gun. I've still got some painting to do on it, but there's a magnet that's going to go in that hole. And I could go ahead and grab a magnet. And when I was using smaller ones, I was afraid that they were just going to drop in there. In fact, they would have. This might not actually just straight up fall in there. It's almost exactly the right size. So I'm going to green stuff a little bit inside there. Just to fill it in, give the magnet a place to rest. Hand mixable, blah, blah, blah. Let's see, residue, sure enough. I don't know how much of this I need. We're just going to grab some, mix it. If you have any green stuff tips, obviously not live because there's nobody here, but if you do watch this and you know about green stuff, don't be afraid to drop a comment and tell me what I'm doing either right or wrong. Really just YOLOing it. Well, the yellow side's definitely stickier than the blue side. Okay. Green stuff, here we go. I'm just going to squeeze some of this together. Optimally without the plastic. Come on, plastic. Oh, that yellow part really is just stuck on there. Stuck fast. Set that guy down. It's going to be so funny if I actually needed rubber gloves and didn't grab them. Wake up with this stuff stuck all over the place. I don't really get how that goes, but we'll just roll that back up. It's a fun experiment. Mash this guy back into his box. Go in your hole. Set that aside. Set it aside down here. Alright. So in theory, I just mash this stuff together till it's green. Make my camera settle down a little bit. And this stuff will eventually harden. Is that how you people do this? Well, it doesn't really look as shiny green as most people have it, so maybe I do need more yellow. Yellow and blue makes green. Getting the yellow part off the plastic is kind of an annoyance. Good Lord. What? What a mess. Oh, science. I love the. He's getting super tacky in my hand, though, which is a good sign. That's what I wanted to do. Oh my god, this stuff sticks everywhere. I'm not the most organized person to begin with. Alright, pack you back up. And I'll keep massaging this together. tacky. Neat. That is pretty cool. Still looks a little too blue, but just keep massaging this thing. All right, that may be enough. Separate this in half. Half's a good number. Sort of roll it into a tube. That's probably way too much. I probably only need half of that. Basically the size of a large pea. Jam this guy in there. I'm going to use basically a dentist tool. That may still be a lot. Pull some of you out of there. Just needs a little bit of backbone. Boop. Then I'm going to jam a magnet right in there. Good measure. Press it in. Scrape some out. Scoop out there. All right. So in theory, still, oh, I need to do magnet. Magneto. The smart way to do this would be to treat all of these like the same direction. This one attached, this one received. And then I scooch this guy just, oh my god, he just perfectly fits in there. Yeah, buddy, yeah. Oh yeah, money. Sweet. This other one should go at which point? Boop. Like, it doesn't go there, but you can see that it's correctamundo. What's up, kitty? I might need to let the cat out of this room. It keeps whining. All right, that actually turns a little bit more green over time too. He's chirping. So I'll turn this into a bead. You all right, buddy? He's whining. Kitten does not understand that when you come in this room, it is a commitment. Lifestyle change. Older cat understands that. That's why the older cat comes in here. At this point, she often comes in here, the older one, just to get away from the small one for a little bit. Kitten's got a lot of energy, to put it mildly. All right, so that sticks that way, so this way is up. Everybody's attacking my stuff. Everybody loves Warhammer in this house, even the cats. Alright, so I'm just pushing that magnet in there. Oh, it's like the perfect size. It drops right in there. I'm so hyped about that. Boom, that sticks. Good business. Now the only thing left to do is put the corresponding magnets on those little pieces. So 2 more magnets. Obviously I don't want to screw these guys up in terms of their polarization either. But we'll just be wicked careful. Let me take the rest of this green stuff, because it will eventually harden. Maybe turn it into some sort of creepy tubing. while I'm here, I'll just leave it somewhere dry. Funny snake. There's camera. Boop. All right, concentrate. I was on magnet duty. Duty. Probably should have scored this guy. Yeah, we'll just pay the ultimate price later. This one I can get back at, thankfully. All right, so if I'm doing this right, sticks that way. Sticks that way. Needs to stick that way. Oh, I forgot it's actually a hinge. It's a hinge. That makes my life so much easier. Dropping your super glue does not make your life easier. Alrighty. Big old pile of super glue on there. Use my key again. Sticks that way. Goes that way. A little bit of a press. And then in theory, hopefully the green stuff keeps these magnets in here, but if it doesn't, it's not a huge deal. But they're still nice and separate. I can still keep working on painting them. Magnets look precariously strong enough. Oh, the thing to remember is that these magnets actually have to go through resin to be magnetic. On the arms, they don't. So hopefully they stick enough. If they don't, then I gotta pry these guys out and maybe get deeper magnets. Oh, if I thought at the beginning of this whole journey that I'd be thinking about deeper magnets. Oh yeah, it looks like terrible. I mean, it does look weathered, but that's gonna need some help. Definitely gonna need some help there. I'm gonna let this stuff dry. See if my cats are chilling, have a sip of tea. Yum. Trusty cup of Earl Grey. I don't know how I did it, but I did manage to quit coffee. Traded it out for tea. Alrighty, what to do next? We have a lot of warp lock bronze to do. This guy away. So for reference, the edge between here, that's warp lock bronze. I like it as a metallic for edging on these Death Guard because it's reasonably dark. You don't get into like super shiny territory. You don't actually have to hit it with a ton of dark washes to like weather it. It just looks naturally like pretty ruddy. You'll see there's a bunch of little tiny bolts on here. Those you could just hit with a dab of Null Oil or Agrex. Interesting that, yeah, I think the white paint is just a me problem. That's just a me problem because the green sides are painted and they've got a decent, nice matte finish to them. I think Wraithbone is just my enemy. Obviously, doing white paint over a darker primer is a challenge. But I think I just needed more steps, more coats, because I'm gonna Agrex that stuff. Maybe that's the next step that I'll do. I'll grab some Agrex. I'll grab some black also in case I need it. I'll just be right around the corner. Gentle. It's easy to forget there's stuff hanging over my head. And I'm not short. Behind yourself, make sure you're not hitting a cat. Alright, so more washes. Classic Death Guard wash. Agrax, Earthshade. Everybody play nice over there. A lot of people use Null Oil. It's super dark. It's like black. I actually use this Viejo. It has a black wash. You just get a lot more of it in the bottle for the price, and it performs pretty well. Yeah, let's do some washing on this because I do got to figure out if Agrax is going to be the way to go. Move this desk up a little bit. There you go. Now my knees fit under it a little bit better. The sound of wrestling cats in the background. Always a pleasure. All right, I got my brush. This stuff is super dark. Oh, buddies. That may be too dark. That is some pretty dark, ruddy stuff. I mean, I'm going to loosen that up a little bit here. But it looks cool. And by loosening it up with water, just making sure that like the actual coloration is just going to spread more. You'll have hopefully more contrast at the edges. But it does pull up faster, so you got to be a little bit careful. Folks, kittens are awesome, but also crazy. Set a dab here. Get some water. Just get into those little fiddly corners. You want some amount of pigment on there. And just move it around. Let it get into those edges. Once again, in this case, I'll give it a little dab of water just to get stuff moving. Watch the other side. Yeah, it's not quite up to the edge. Yeah, that white's a problem. It certainly is. That is at some point just going to get another coat over the top of everything. Don't know how I would solve for that in the future. Don't know. Like, I can't shake or can that piece with white. I could. Maybe that is the solution. Maybe the shin plates and the shoulder plates, I shake or can with white to start. Or I get an airbrush. I save up my 8 cents a day with monetization money for 14 years, maybe I can get an airbrush for little bits like that. Maybe it just needs another coat. So what I will try, this may be very painful, I will try another coat of white over that, not tonight. Not while I'm suffering like this. It's like boop, sticking at the bottom, just give it a dab, get some of the excess out of there while it's pooling. Yeah, that looks good. Maybe I do need an airbrush. It doesn't take much for me to convince myself that I need to buy another toy. That is faux show. This hobby, not cheap. Not cheap. Not for the faint of heart. Crazy glue is the bomb. Crazy glue everything. What did we do before crazy glue? What did we do? Just a little bit of water. Yeah, I think I'm just going to bring this over to my wet palette just so it's a little bit thinner. Get into those edges. Happy little edges. Oh my god, I just Bob Ross. I apologize for that. They are happy though. Look at that. It really is magical how this stuff works together. Um, I am getting better. You don't have to really be great at this to really enjoy it. And there's so much newness to it. I was talking the other day about like you just pick a different factions models and the approach just becomes entirely different. The experience of painting just one ultramarine. This guy was fun. Um, he was out of the starter box where you just get three Infernus Marines and it's like 4 colors of paint. No, it's 3 colors of paint, I think. 1 wash and then the basing material. And you could do a lot with that. But everything here was like clean sight lines, these big broad areas of shininess. You put these 2 guys next to each other, and it's a very different experience painting them. Obviously, I put a lot more time and different paints into this, but it's like devastatingly different. Like this guy gets a round knee pad. This guy gets a freaking dope skull in there. This guy has this like shin guard thing, whatever that's called. This one has like gears and pistons sticking through a hole in it. The Ultramarine has this really cool shiny gun. My dear Plague Marine's got 2 just like ruddy, gross, rusted, spiky, pockmarked bits. It's a totally different experience, and they're both awesome. I find myself like wanting to get into. I mean, this is a testament to that. Doing a big old chaos night, just totally different experience than what I'm used to. I find myself, especially the more I read, the more I consume 40k lore. Like I really don't want to do some orc stuff. Orcs are dope. Just absolute love of battle, like a whole culture just around that, uninhibited by thoughts of. I mean, obviously they have the whole Mork Gork God thing, but it's still like they're just such good comedic relief. They remind you that you're playing a game. And though the IP treats them like reasonably seriously, they're so goony. It keeps things a little bit light. Like I imagine, I use that term I imagine very literally. I'm sure there's some jerks that play orcs, but I would imagine the ratio of people that are just cool and having a good time playing the game as orcs is probably reasonably high. Getting that DACA. DACA, DACA. All right. So those are coming in. I could. The big question is, whoop. How much wash is this guy going to get in toto? Does that dab around? Like all these little edges here. Definitely going to get it. But honestly, I might just wash the daylights out of this thing. Does that even make any sense? Is that logical? Right now, I'm just experimenting with how it looks, how it pops on these edges. That's pretty dark stuff. Could thin it to win it. Yeah, I'm definitely learning that these washes on huge panels are very weird, but good. I know I like them. But they just perform differently. They do different stuff. Which is neat. Alright, I'm gonna hit this whole panel up here. I'm actually just gonna wash the whole thing all the way to the seams as an experiment see, and yes, I know it's on there pretty thick, but as I've shown you, I've got a trusty Q-tip by my side, all the way to the edges. This panel will be a very good test how much I want to wash the rest of this whole kit and caboodle. All the way up to that edge. I have to chew with a little water. Dab that around so things loosen up and move a little bit. A lot of times you just have to pull that brush just close enough to the seam so that the liquid gets in there and just overcome the dryness. Then it can start moving around. Yeah, glop, glop, glop. And that's a pretty heavily washed piece. I am going to dab it. It's so funny when you dab it, you can literally see the wash like scurrying about. That's pretty grimy. We gotta let it dry. I am gonna put a special little dab right in that little fan. It does soak in over time, which is neat. Yeah, that Seraphim Sepia does look absolutely just messy painted in. That looks like that's rough. That needs some fixing. I need to figure something out for those shin guards at the very least. Those are big pieces. It's not as crazy bad here, but I need to figure something out there as well. It just ain't coming together. I mean, I could like bury it in Agrax Earthshade. I'm not going to do that right out the gate. But I could. I always do check. It's like a couple Reddits that I'm on that I don't post much on, but the Death Guard 40k Reddit is pretty awesome. And just seeing people's like, I did my first Plague Marine. I think I posted that as well. It's just like so awesome to see people just hyped about their first Plague Marine. I'll let that dry. I said I was going to let it dry. I'm going to let it dry. Alright, so obviously I am like experimenting in real time. Relatively expensive model. If you don't know me, that's just kind of how I work. I just kind of, it's not like I never look stuff up. I do, I swear it. But I just kind of like to experiment and work my way through problems. And I'm not afraid to go back and change things once I've started. At all. Sometimes to a fault. So, this one. See how this shin looks. I mean, the other thing I could do if I really need to back away from this white treatment is use a different white next time. Go over the thing with another coat. It may just need another coat. The nice thing is that with it being that smooth, put multiple coats on it if they're not, doing like laying it on super thick. Because there is no fine detail to lose. It can look a little bit more plasticky. Because it has like all of that surface area. It's flat and smooth. Smooth is better than flat. Flat sort of denotes that it's not rounded. Smooth surface area. Yeah, I'm good to go on that. This part I like. Agrax on this I always get the name wrong. Slimy Grime Dark. Good stuff. Once again, though, that's very much like a wash. It performed very different on these smooth faces than it did on my other Death Guard, but I still like It has an interesting sort of matte finish to it. It is not really a paint. It has a bunch of gross material in it. This is dedicated Slimy Grime Dark. I never wash it. It just keeps getting this grime in the bottom of it. Thick grime soup. Never wash that thing. Then I add some more from the bottle. Give it a stir. It's different every time, but consistent, if that makes sense. It's always grimy. But you get these pools of whatever that swamp material is that's in there. I'm really curious what it is. You can see the stuff floating around when you pour the paint. Like you have to shake the daylights out of it. And you kind of have to stir it in the dish a bit. But for Death Card stuff, it is pretty sweet. So I'll probably wash the daylights out of the footies too. Make sure I get some of that crack. I don't have to worry too much about that. That's pretty heavy. That's par for the course. Alright, and then right near where it pools the most, because pooling is good, it's just too much pooling is bad. Just hit it with a Q-tip in those corners a little. The reason I wait till this point and I kind of lay it on heavy is you can watch it sort of, you're going to see where it's going to move to, and you want it to move to where it wants to move to for the most part. You turn the thing around a little bit, and then once it gets there, there may be a little bit too much medium, so you just hit the edge a little bit so it doesn't pool too much. This thing has certainly been quite challenging. Close this up for now. Quite challenging. Put my guns on top. This carapace. Triple checking. They fit on nice. The point of these swapping around, I got to remagnet this dude, is that you can either have 2 sets of missiles and a gun, or 2 sets of guns and a missile. Is that right? I did. So those I'll be able to swap out. and then, please stick well. Yeah, it does. Oh yeah, without having to go through the rest, and it sticks great. This guy, either his torso shows up with either these 2 guns, or an entirely different set of 2 guns. Well, a gun and a harpoon. And so I'll be able to swap those out, which is rad. I'm really glad this worked. The other bonus you get out of 2 circular magnets is that you can pose the thing. So this shoulder does move, and then the guns can be rotated because it's just magnet to magnet, and because they're both round, they're going to try to actually center themselves so that the most amount of magnetism is happening. So you get some rotation out of it. You actually get some decent posability, and for like I think this thing is like $150 model. I'm not building 2 of them just so I can have 2 weapon layouts. I might build 10 of them to have different paint jobs on them, but the weapons I want to change based on what I'm feeling for my army. So I'm considering the magnet part of this operation now a success. The paint, not so much yet. I do have to figure out what I'm going to do with all of that pretty gnarly looking white Seraphim Sepia, but I am going to give it the benefit of the doubt and let it sit around and cure and dry before I make any snap decisions. But if I had to guess, I'm probably going over it with another coat of white. I actually don't know how many coats of paint people put on models. I have no idea. I should do some looking around. But I feel like if I put 2 coats on something, I feel like that's a lot. For big smooth panels like this, that's a guess. I mean, people may be like, yeah, it takes 5 coats for this not to look like garbage. Most of my painting experience as a human being is painting interior walls, and like I generally feel like I get most of my stuff done with 2 coats, but I'm using a roller. Yeah, it's weird. It's definitely weird. I might have to do something very textural. That might help. that's something to look into. Like I could hit those lighter parts with something like Sponge Dab. SpongeBob. I do have a heaping pile of neat sponges that I could definitely use to get some like interesting texture on there. But, you know, truth be told, that absolutely looks like my inner 12-year-old painted something. My inner 12-year-old got out in terms of painting technique. And it looks like someone painted a model with a brush and did a poor job. So I got a lot to think about. Anyway, it's been like an hour. I think I'm going to cut out, but the magnets worked. The green with the dark wash definitely works. I am psyched about how the trim is going to look with Warplock Bronze. Magnets are dope. But I got to let this guy dry before I take any next steps. So I'm going to kill this stream. And we'll see next time. Got to prepare that white. I might try a couple experiments offline and see what happens. Anyway, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.